Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second presentation in the SimEA seminar series. Last week, we had the inaugural lecture by Professor Harmandaris, and today we are joined by Dr. Petra Bacova, who is a postdoctoral researcher in the SimEA research team. Dr. Petra Bacova is a physical chemist. She received her PhD degree from the University of Basque Country in 2004 under the framework of the Marie Curie ITA in Dynacop. She spent several years as a postdoctoral researcher in Crete, where she was involved in a project that focused on nanostructured materials with application in energy under the Stavros Niarchos Fellowship and in a project in collaboration with Goodyear. During her research stay in the Materials Physics Center in San Sebastian in 2006, she was part of a multidisciplinary national project concerning single-chain polymer nanoparticles. Her research interests include simulations of all types of polymer materials. She has published 18 papers in refereed journals and 4 in refereed conference proceedings. Recently, Dr. Petra Bacova joined the SimEA project as a postdoctoral fellow, and here she will address a well-known problem concerning the degree of star penetration and of the cooperative motion of star-like molecules in dense conditions by employing atomistic molecular dynamics simulations in combination with specifically designed analysis tools. Please note that if you have any questions during the presentation, you can post these in the GoToWebinar platform or alternatively in the YouTube live stream. Dr. Petra Bacova, I will now pass over to you.
Thank you, Kathy. So, hello, everybody. Thanks for listening. It's my pleasure to continue today what Professor Harmandaris started in his first lecture previously, and namely to tell you about the computational design of materials. As this video will be later posted on YouTube, it feels like now it's the right time to tell you that you can click below and find the previous lecture in the channel of the Cyprus Institute. For those who are listening to me through the online streaming and did not see the first lecture, well, I'm sorry to tell you that now it's too late to search for the first talk, but don't worry, I will start nicely from the beginning. I will speak today about the specific family of materials. They are called polymer materials, but most of the people are familiar with the term plastic. Well, let's start with a small experiment. I bet that right now around you can find at least 3 plastic materials. So just look around, I will give you a few seconds. And I will help you a bit. So, for example, in the mobile case, the keyboard, your headphones, your water bottle, well, it looks like I won the bet. Actually, the term plastic refers to a specific type of polymer materials. And the objects that are shown here in these pictures, not all of them are plastic. So to confuse you a bit more, all plastics are polymers, but not all polymers are plastic. So what exactly is then the polymer? Polymer, as the Greek name says, it's a macromolecule which consists of smaller units that are called monomers. The process in which the polymer is prepared is called polymerization. And we have also a property that it's called degree of polymerization, and this tells us how many of these units are in the specific macromolecule. So on the right, you can see an example. This example is of polystyrene. So the monomeric unit of the polystyrene is styrene, and this here. And here, under that, you can see a chain that consists of 10 polystyrene units. So polystyrene is a well-known polymer. It's a synthetic polymer, and it's, for example, used in packaging. So your laptop, for example, was packaged in a polystyrene because before it was put in a cardboard box. Also, sometimes the takeaway coffees, they have coffee lids made of polystyrene. So apart from synthetic polymers, we also know biopolymers. And one example would be, for example, DNA, this shown here. It also consists of smaller units that would, in this case, would be nucleotides. Hair is an example of a biofiber. And also starch from potatoes, for example, it's created by the long polysaccharides. And the cellulose would be a more complex example of the polysaccharide. So if you spotted some similarities between our polystyrene chain and this huge polysaccharide here, well spotted. You are right, and because of these similarities, the starch was among the first candidates for the biodegradable materials that are meant to replace the one-usage plastics in the future. So let's start talking about the polymers, about the materials that we use every day. So maybe you know this, but in many of the plastic materials, you can find a label with a name and with a specific number. So, for example, in the bottom of your water bottle, you can find this triangle with a specific number. So this is a specific label for a specific material. Now, there are two facts. One is related to the environment. This means this label is only the label of the material. It does not necessarily mean that this material can be recycled. And the second fact, it's related to the numbers and to the statistics. So the higher it's the number in the triangle, the lower is the possibility that this material can be recycled in your city. Now, when we look at the polyethylene as an example, there are two types of them. So one is labeled with the number 2 and it's high density polyethylene, and the other is labeled with a 4 and it's a low density polyethylene. So both of these materials, they consist of the same polymer, the polyethylene. However, the way that their monomeric units are connected together is different. That's why they have different density. So as we can see here in this sketch, the high density polyethylene consists primarily of long linear chains with short branches, while the low density polyethylene has a highly branched structure. This architecture, this polymer architecture, determines their properties. So we can perform a small experiment. Sorry for not informing you before that this talk will also have a short experiment. Anyway, so if you have somewhere a bottle cap and also a plastic bag, you can perform a tensile strength experiment. It means that you will try to stretch the bottle cap and then you will try to stretch the polyethylene bag. So I will leave the analysis of the experimental data to you, and we will continue with the simulation, with the talk. So apart from the very complicated structures produced industrially and commercially, there are also some model polymer architectures, as for example, stars, combs, and brushes. So I, in my work, mostly focus on the star architecture as a model structure that will later on help us to understand the properties of more complex polymers. So why we are interested in such complex structures when our life can be nicely linear? I will give you one very practical example about materials that are used for energy storage. So the lithium-ion batteries are currently the most popular batteries in the market. Actually, they also received last year a Nobel Prize in Chemistry. So these batteries are so popular because they have high energy density and design flexibility. High energy density means how much energy we can store per a certain mass. So it means that these batteries can be produced in very small sizes, as for example, for the mobile applications or for your laptop. So apart from a specific choice of electrodes, so in the right picture here, our electrodes would be labeled with a plus and minus. Apart from the choice of this electrode, the performance of the battery also depends on the electrolyte that is in between these two electrodes. So that would be our flash sign right here. it has been shown that the liquid electrolyte is unstable, what opened the door for the polymer-based batteries. Nowadays, the most popular battery is a hybrid type that consists of polymer matrix, electrolyte, and a salt. However, there is a huge effort in commercializing batteries that would consist of solid polymer matrix. It means that there would be no solvent. So in that effort, the one very well-known problem is that the materials that they have improved mechanical properties have very low conductivity. So recently, there was an experimental evidence from our collaborators from the IESL in 14th Crete that if they added star-shaped particles in the electrolyte solution, they got a material that exhibits very good mechanical properties and conductivity in a certain range of temperatures. So this, the author suggested that this uniqueness of the materials comes from the fact that the polymer particles form a percolated network. So to be more specific, these polymer particles were consisted of the mycto-arm stars, as they are illustrated right here. And this is the illustration of the percolated network. So in this percolated network, the polymer parts with the less mobility would improve the mechanical properties, but there will be still the channels where the ions could move. In that case, the architecture of the used polymer is very important because the linear analog of this material does not form a percolated network at given conditions. So now we are motivated. We know why we are studying these materials. We should check closely what is their composition. So till now, I was mostly talking about polymer materials, which consisted of one type of polymer, and these are called homopolymers. We can also tune the properties of polymer by adding different polymer types, and that would be called copolymer. In this talk, I will only talk about two types of polymers, namely polyethylene oxides, that I labeled with red color, and polystyrene, that is drawn with blue color. I will, as I said, I will only talk about the star-like architecture. So in that case, I will have F arms attached to one common central point, as you can see in these drawings. Also, if we attach arms of different chemistry into one central point, we call these structures mycto-arm stars. Another way of tuning the properties is by adding a nano filler. So the way how you want to tune the properties will determine what kind of a nano filler you would like to use. So here I only listed a few examples of the nanofillers that we have studied in our group. It can be, for example, silicon nanoparticles that are used in the tire industry to improve the mechanical properties of the tires. Then you can also use graphene, that is well known for its high conductivity and a specific surface area. Or also, you can also use particles, all polymer particles, with complex architecture, so it would be this dendrite here, which have the advantage of, in most cases, being compatible with the polymer matrix, so you will have less issues when you will try to mix your composite together. So again, we have the motivation, we know what we want to study, and now I would like to tell you how we can model the material properties. Well, there is not a simple answer for that, because you need to choose the methods according to the time and length scales that you would like to study. So there are simulation methods that look down to the quantum states, for example, density functional theory. Then there are methods that they describe all atomistic details, and these are called atomistic models. And I would like to stop here. And I would say that in the ideal world, like ideal that we would have unlimited computational power, we could stop here and just happily simulate all possible materials with atomistic details. However, since the world is not ideal, we need to sacrifice some degrees of freedom, and we need to coarse-grain our system if we want to reach higher length and time scales, sometimes till the continuous level. Because the properties that I want to study depend on the chemistry of each polymers. In order to bridge the gap between the theory and experiment, I chose the atomistic molecular dynamic simulation method. So we know what is atomistic. Now I would like to explain you what is molecular dynamics method. Molecular dynamics is a simulation method that allows to study time evolution of the system. Evolution means that we can get the positions of our particle or our object in time. So let's start with, let's say we have n number of particles. That's why we talk about the n-body problem. These n bodies can be either particles or planets. The algorithm would be exactly the same. So we start the algorithm with initializing the system. Then, depending on the mutual interactions of the objects, we calculate the forces and we update the positions and the velocities in the next time step. Then we calculate and store the important quantities, and we repeat this circle as many times as necessary. I would like to say that in these four calculations, we use the classical dynamics or Newton's equations of motion. So after various months, sometimes even the full PhD life, you can stop the simulation and print the final output. Now, from the physical point of view, the challenge is to know the interaction potential. So this part. So the challenge is to know what is the interaction among the particles that we have in the system. Now, from the computational point of view, the most time-consuming part is the integration of the equations of motion, since for each numerical calculations needed for the simulations scale as n to the square, so with the number of particles that we have in a system. Now, knowing also the method, so the motivation, the material that we have, we also now have the method. We can build our bottom-up approach. Bottom-up, it means that we start nicely from the small particles and small systems, and our aim is to predict the properties of macroscopic materials. So as I said, we collect together all the pieces of our material. We design the desired architecture, so the material under study. Then we simulate the system and we obtain certain properties. So if we do it systematically, it means that we will systematically change various variables. As for example, here it can be the number of arms. We can get a full information about a certain property and be able to predict from this data the behavior of the macroscopic material. So how do we prepare our system? We start from the central particle, which was designed to mimic the experimental one. So here we start with the central particle for 4, 8, 16, and 32 arms. So depending on how many arms we want to attach. And then this is the example of the arm. We are attaching the arms to the central particle and we perform the equilibration. So I was told that in this point, I make it feel like playing with Lego. So I make it feel like it's very easy to prepare the system. So I would like to correct that, because actually the preparation of the system is the most time-consuming part and the trickiest one. And also, to the best of my knowledge, right now we are the only group that had enough patience to set up atomistic model for the polymer stars. Also, since, as I said, it's a time-consuming process, I would like to stress that computational design is still nowadays faster than the design in the laboratory. So we have our systems, and here I would like to present you some of our projects that we are currently running. So we will first talk about the homopolymer stars. So if we go back, it means that we attach to our central particle only polymer of one type. And in these projects, we were changing the number of arms and studied how the shape will change. So you can see it in this picture on the left. So by attaching more arms to the central part, we can see that the shape changes from the prolate to the spherical one. And actually, this picture will be soon the front cover of the Macromolecule Theory and Simulation journal. So soon it will be in your scientific database. So in this paper, we studied the basic properties of the system. And as a SimEA researcher, I would like to push these boundaries a bit further and run much bigger systems in which we would be able to observe the mutual orientations of the stars in space. Now here, again, I would like to stop. And for the people who fell asleep or who speed up the video and they just seen this sentence, I would like to clear up that we are talking about the polymer stars and we are not talking about the astrophysics and the orientation of the stars in the universe. So going back to the polymer physics, what we would like to see, as for example, you can see here on the right side, is how actually these star polymers arrange in the space. And why this would be important? Well, because these are model systems, and the information that we obtain for these systems can be, for example, extrapolated for some properties of the hairy particles in membranes that are used for the CO2 filtration, for example, or that can be used for the arrangement of the soft colloidal particles. Apart from the static properties in these big systems, I would like to study their dynamic. So these polymer stars, when they have a high number of arms, they resemble colloidal particles. And I would like to study the collective motions in the dense environment. It is illustrated here on the right side. So apart from computational challenge of having 500,000 of particles, there is another computational challenge because this motion of the stars in this dense environment, it's very slow. So if you look at the motion of the center of mass, that in my sketch is labeled with a heart, what I would like to do is to follow the trajectory of the center of mass, so to follow the heart, and observe one phenomenon that was previously reported for much simple computational model. And namely, it was a phenomenon that says that this star will reside in a certain region. So there will be the regions of the longer residence that will be connected with the transient regions. Another project that we published last year in summer, it's related to the star polymers, which have arms of two polymer types. So as I said, we have a polyethylene oxide with red and polystyrene with blue. And these two polymers are immiscible. It means that if they will be attached to one common core, they will try to segregate. So by doing the computational design of these particles, we could see that depending on the number of arms and on the length of the arms, as well as the environment, we observe the nanosegregation either to a JAMS particle or to a Apache particle. So let's summarize it again. We have three factors: the number of arms that is increasing in this direction, the length of the arm that is increasing in this direction, and we simulated it in three different environments. The Janus particle means that I have two segregated regions. The patchy means that I can spot various non-segregated regions. So having information about these single particles, we inserted various particles and mixed it with the polymer matrix, specific polymer matrix, in order to observe the behavior. And this work was related to the experimental evidence that I introduced in the beginning. So we noticed that if we mix the micto-arm stars with a specific polymer matrix, they will form a percolated network in agreement with the experimental study that the results can be shown here in this picture. Also, as I said before, we did not observe the percolated network for the linear analogs as they form the cylindrical objects. We also, in addition to the experimental results, we were able to detect the slow and fast regions in our system, as well as fully quantified it. And this is one of the ways how to do that. Here we have the displacement of the given segments along the star arm. Now, in order to study these systems systematically, as I said, we varied only one parameter in this study, and namely we changed the number of arms. So we changed the number of arms from 4 to 32, and we observed that if the stars have a low number of arms, 4, 8, and so on, they form the cylindrical structure similar to the linear chain. And if the functionality, so the number of arms was high, they were creating this network-like structure. It is also because of the shape of their individual stars that are in the assembly. So we observed that the individual shape of the stars with low functionality was prolate, while the stars with many arms maintain their spherical structure. Also, as a part of the SimEA team, we already started now a collaboration where we would like to start a real bottom-up approach, and using these building blocks, so these patchy particles that I presented you before, in order to see how they assemble in the supramolecular systems. So if we go back a bit, we are taking the set of these 4 particles, okay? As you can see, those 3 are Janus particles, so they have only 2 nanosegregated regions, and this one is the most interesting one, the patchy one. So we took this patchy particle, and in the given under given conditions, we want to see what will be the final structure if they will try to connect together. Why we would be interested in such a phenomenon? It's because quite recently, there was a study on patchy particles that said that, for example, they are even able to form helices. In some of the Janus particle studies, they've seen clusters or the percolated networks, as I said before. So this is one of our future projects that I'm very excited about. So this is more or less what I would like to present you today. These are my plans for the SimEA project. It would not be possible without the help of all of my colleagues. So in the first web page, you can find my colleagues from Crete, so from Fourth Institute in Crete. In the second web page, you can find my current colleagues, and in all the slides, you can find the foundings that I've received in the last years. And I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Bacova. If anybody has any questions, we'll give you a moment to post these in the, as I mentioned earlier, in the GoToWebinar platform or in the YouTube live stream.
Hello, I would like to ask a question if I can.
Yes, please begin.
Yeah, I would like to say something more about your last project about nanoparticles. I mean, why do you choose micto-arm stars, or why you choose mixed arm stars actually.
Yeah, thank you. So I will go back to that. So it all started somewhere here where we were simulating the single molecules. So we chose the mixed arm stars with immiscible polymers in order to observe this nanosegregation. And actually, the most exciting part of that project was that by tuning the number of arms, we were able to tune the final morphology of the particle. So before it has been observed that star polymers, they can create the Janus nanoparticles. So that would be the particle that has only two segregated regions. But it has not been seen before that it is also possible to create a patchy particle. So in this last project, we would like to maintain the patchiness, so maintain the patchy structure. So we are simulating very specific conditions of the bed solvent in order to maintain these patches and see how they orient when they are connected into the supramolecular system. So let me rephrase it a bit. This is also in general quite a mathematical problem because there are various studies on patchy particles, but very coarse-grained studies. So basically the particle was simulated as one impenetrable objects with the patches with a certain interactions. So here we have real polymer systems. They are not hard spheres, so we can also see partial penetrations of the arms. So this is a new type of material that resembles soft patching particles, but however with some internal structure that it's quite impossible right now to predict what we are going to get. So there are some theoretical studies and also mathematical studies in order to weigh how you can basically connect patches with a different size and with a different number of patches, but it has been never shown in the real system. So by using this method that perfectly captures all atomistic details, we can go to the real polymeric materials and address some problems that were shown before only in a very coarse grain or theoretical models.
I see. Thank you.
Hello, I would like to ask a question about the motion of the center of mass of the stars. What are you planning to do with the trajectories and why is it so important to produce them?
Well, thanks. So, in principle, again, it has been shown a long time ago and with a relatively simple model and the Monte Carlo method that there are some certain regions, like the resident regions, and then the transient regions, as I described before. So, since it has been only shown with a more coarse-grained method and more simple method, and it has been never analyzed mathematically, only visually. So in those papers, they report the trajectories. As you can see, as I use one of the examples of my trajectories from the simulation. And you can see that that there are some certain regions, but I would like to apply mathematical models in order to properly describe and define what is exactly the resident time in each of these regions. If we can really distinguish the different transient motion, and also why would be that important? Well, apart from the, let's say, theoretical point of view, this collective motion of stars is responsible for a very different rheological properties of these systems. So again, we would be able to explain some properties that were measured a long time ago by rheological measurements.
Okay, thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? All right, well then, in closing, we would like to thank everyone, well, firstly, Dr. Petra Bacova for a very interesting presentation, and thank you to everyone for joining us this afternoon, and we wish you a good afternoon further. Goodbye.